one of the things that I kind of need your help with at this point is a willingness for the characters to be interacting. And if you guys want to, now's the perfect time, if you can, to sort of state what your dual purpose is. I mean, in the sense that in the fiction, people would be talking about Power Star and Advance as, you know, a team, as a group, a mini group, a dynamic duo. And so therefore your characters being associated with each other in action, acting towards some purpose is, you know, what would that be, if anything, I guess is what I'm asking. What would be and especially in the sense of kind of generic or thematic, or, I mean, not like something specific.
So I'm not sure if this is what you're going for, but it already occurred to me that Power Star would like to invite Advance to meet Dr. Darkstar.
Aha.
So I believe the two technologists should have a conversation.
Excellent. Okay.
And of course, I want to follow up and find out if Darkstar's okay after that weird event. So.
Absolutely, I completely get that. So focusing on that is important. Denise comes back from her hiking trip unscathed. So even though she is a DNPC with public ID who went hiking off by herself in the middle of a media shitstorm, well, all I have to say is that sometimes I like to pace myself. That's all. Anyway, so she did that, but she did discover and had a couple of difficult times when she was on her way back and she got recognized, and it was a big deal. So it's like they were just like taking off their backpacks in the parking lot to come home. When somebody recognizes her, tweets it, and within 10 minutes a news team shows up, and it's a great big hassle. And Denise kind of gets an object lesson in what a pain in the ass life has just become. Especially because this time people are, happily, creating memes and turning the whole thing into, an event. And she's not used to that. Not her happy place.
Also, in terms of the extra 10 points that you said, well, what's the extra 10 points on, for her DNPC?
Right. Psychological limitation, wasn't it?
No, there really wasn't anything on there.
No, not on the sheet, but I thought we were going to make her determined or stubborn or like a not quit determinator for psychological limitation. Was that okay?
Yeah, that was fine. The only other thing I came up with was long-term exposure to this energy has strange consequences.
Oh.
She's been with me, around me for so long and working with this energy, but the determined is fine too.
Having learned this for the first time, let me shelve that and make use of it later if I want to, because it's kind of cool.
Sure.
Sure. All right. The other let's talk about Mike though. And before, you ended up in Humboldt, which is, from Walla Walla to Humboldt is on the southern border of eastern Washington, and then now you're zipped over to the to get to Humboldt. You're on the northern border of western California, and so it's kind of like you went zoop in a big diagonal across Oregon, which is fine, but it's not an easy trip back necessarily. In terms of kind of organizing yourself. I guess there's a disc in Seattle. Obviously there's a disc in Seattle that you could use. And I don't know if you wanted to. By the way, if you do want to try the one back to Walla Walla, which was in Dr. Darkstar's living place.
Facility, yeah.
Yes, facility. You'll find that even if you like, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Right.
That's disappointing.
Yes. And so, at least this particular trip back to it doesn't. So that's a bit of a mystery. I'll clarify a few things quickly. To just make sure that he's not dead, that you can do.
Yeah.
You have the contact to do that. And another thing I wanted to say, though, is that you did have an invitation from your brother Aaron to meet for dinner.
Okay, so I've got an obligation.
Right.
Ah, okay.
Now, it might not have been that very same evening because if you'd planning on disking back from Walla Walla, why not, right? But I thought you drove out. I thought you went out there more mundanely. Yeah, that's right. So anyway, your car is sitting over there.
Dude, where's my car?
Exactly. So anyway, you've got a whole bunch of hassles of very mundane hassles. If you want to honor this, or if you want to delay it by a day or whatever, that's cool too. But Mike has already let you know, or Mike, you're Mike. Aaron has already let you know that he wants to talk about the money.
Of course he does.
Yeah. And he doesn't want to blindside you. He wants to have a nice dinner with you, but he says, I have to warn you that, I've got some information. I've got some potential plans or projects. I've got some thoughts. I've got, some ideas about how we need to talk about this, you and me.
Okay. Does he want to? Where are we meeting?
Well, I wanted to ask you about the restaurant.
No, that's
where would it be?
The first thought.
Yeah, where would it be in Chicago in Seattle?
Seattle. Having lived in the Ballard neighborhood of Seattle, I was just going to put it on. What's it called? Market Street. There's actually a theme restaurant on there.
If I was looking at that kind of north-south peninsula, which they use for the Seattle map always, and I was standing on the Space Needle, where would I go to get to Ballard neighborhood?
You go northeast across. There's I never remember what the body of water is called, but there's that water that divides north and south.
Right, that cuts through.
Central.
Yeah.
So Ballard is just north of that water on the west side.
Okay. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. So excellent. But actually, I think that this wouldn't be at the restaurant. And you might want to give me the name of the restaurant too. What's a good name for it? Because it's your characters and all that. And I don't know what's it like. I mean, it's a successful one, which means it probably has a fairly well-defined identity as a restaurant. A particular look and feel, or a particular, experience or social. Do you have any idea about that? I'm not asking you to come up with a full business plan and tax on it, but or even an architectural thing. But
names are always a challenge.
Right.
So I'm
that's okay.
Draw on my the favorite Italian restaurant that used to be in that general neighborhood, and it's no longer. It's called the Asteroid.
That actually kind of works.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you want it to be an Italian restaurant, or you just want to rip off the name?
Oh, I like the Italian aspect.
Okay. Excellent. All right. Yeah. Okay. Meeting there is not actually. He wants it to be on more neutral, less loaded ground.
I wondered about that.
And he and he also says that he has invited somebody who is potentially knowledgeable about managing large amounts of money in customized investment ways. And so, therefore, since the person is from out of town, says there's several people that he's talked to, then he is. They of course want to go to the Space Needle.
Okay, it's a nice fancy restaurant at the top.
Right. It goes around and around, all that. Everybody knows about it. Anybody who's coming into Seattle, anybody coming in like this is going to go, can we go up there? So. So I guess there's no way around it, I suppose. I guess it's kind of like living in San Francisco, and then your friends come from out of town. They all want to eat at Fisherman's Wharf. Even though you have these great restaurants that no tourists ever go to, and it's down the way on the little street. No, they want to go to Fisherman's Wharf. So you make your reservation, and go and stand in line with Sam and Ethel from Tennessee to go do, because you got to do it. Well, all that said, I want to ask the two of, therefore, it probably isn't too crazy for Vince to at least be in Seattle at this point because of the intended trip out to go see Dr. Darkstar.
So, Vince, how would I call him? Dr. What's his name?
Frank, how does Vince like to be addressed?
We'll keep it as Vince. It's probably pretty
okay.
So unless we're in like a scientific setting or something.
Yeah, he's got a graying ponytail. I doubt he's one of the really hung up. He's not a real hung up type of scientist. So yeah.
Okay. I think I'd probably start by using a formal address, and then you'd say, just call me Vince.
Right.
So,
yeah. Right.
Okay. So Vince, I would. Yeah, Dr. Darkstar is a public figure. So, Vince, I think that you should meet and talk with Dr. Darkstar. Would you be into coming to Seattle with me today? And we can use that as a base to go out and visit him where he's in the prison in Walla Walla.
Well, it looks like he might have some answers, or at least can help point us in the right direction with this strangeness. So, let's go ahead and do that. I'll make arrangements for my absence here, and we'll do that.
Okay. Well, meet me at City Hall. How long do you need?
Shortly.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, how are you going to get back there?
Oh, I'll show you. But bring a overnight bag.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Excellent. And so the other thing I want to point out is that, remember, Gavin had mentioned that you were to meet Janelle James, who was going to be talking to you about publicity, promotion, directions, and stuff like that. This might throw a little monkey wrench into that meeting. But as it happens, Janelle had taken a rain check for the next day anyway, because she has a guest coming in to join at the meeting that she thinks is going to be very important. So, and you have to wait. She was going to ask to wait for another day anyway. So, okay. So that's that. Just letting you wonder who that guest may be, and we'll take it from there. You'll meet her briefly. She's very much a kind of upscale media professional black woman who seems to know her way around the entrepreneur world. Makes no social missteps at all in terms of how you talk about this stuff. So let's see here. We have the next deal. What now? What am I missing? I know I'm missing things. I so know I'm missing things.
How we are going to, what you said in the beginning, how we're going to be perceived,
right?
As a duo.
Well, I was thinking of it from more of the player standpoint. When you look at this super team, what do we do? If you're the Fantastic Four, we live in our Baxter building, and we have kind of cosmic and techno adventures and deal with, beings who are pretty heavy hitters, at that level. And if we are, if we're the X-Men, then we are a somewhat beleaguered minority trying to show that we can go along and get along as opposed to be separatists. And so on.
Okay, I gotcha. Yeah, go ahead.
I'll just throw out the idea you started with the physics man was not meant to know.
Oh, right.
It's kind of like the idea that our adventures revolve around technologies that are weird technologies that have appeared over time and are the owned by elite groups or special masterminds, that kind of thing.
Right.
And that we live in that kind of community, as it were.
Right. Yeah. I get that, and I also like the fact that this is location-wise, regionally-wise, a world-class hotbed of energy management and production controversy. And I'm not just talking about, should we go green? I'm saying that the entire relationship of nuclear, hydro, alternate, and petroleum energy, particularly when it comes to city management and state networking of energy, it's all like exploding in every possible direction. You got Vancouver, you got Seattle, you got Portland. Everywhere is all hooked up. The power structure, the political power structure at all is a nightmare. And you're dealing with different countries, different states. States don't, rivers don't care about borders.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you do with that? How do you reason with a river and tell it that this part is this and that part's that? And the river doesn't care what you say. And that's irritating because the voters think that's important and blah, blah, blah. So anyways, the point is that it's a neat place to have that as a consideration. Socially as well as science fiction wise.
So like as like a super team identity, is that what you're coming across?
I guess so, except it doesn't make it's not
direction.
Well, I guess so. Because it means that will take on a little more focus when we start thinking in terms of adversaries. Then you could turn that into saying, we fight these guys.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. Well, going on what Alan said, if we could be the protectors, safeguarders, of these sort of weird phenomenon to make sure that they're not being abused or harnessed for evil.
It's kind of interesting because you're sort of explorers into it and guardians of it. So that works. It's not. We don't exactly have a bumper sticker yet, but
right.
All right. With all that, our next.
I have some action figures from the '80s.
All right, then it's a start. Yes, true. It's a start. The only thing Janelle will say to you in that regard is that she says she brought 2 folders with her, and after her second chat with Gavin recently, the one folder that was going to be all action figures and memes and mascots and stuff, she'll just put that one over here, put that one away. She gets it. So we now take it to I think we can just take it straight to where we're going. One thing that I will say too is that that investors are starting to, a different breed of investors is starting to sniff around Vince's business now that he's advanced, revealed as advanced, a whole different sphere of interest in terms of profitability has appeared. And so therefore the kind of number of people that you would not have considered working with before just because you were too little fish or not in the right sphere of their interest or whatever are now interested. And that's another thing that this woman has in mind. How do we deal with that? How can I orient you properly toward this world so you can make decisions? All right, so it's sounding pretty good in my opinion. She seems like she knows what she's doing. She's given some thought. Now we take you guys to Seattle, and I suppose you get an interesting experience when you go to the city council building in Walla Walla, in Humboldt, and discover that you can step through too. Now, where is the disc in Seattle? Is it in the cave?
Yes, it would be. Trying to think where that would be located. I'm thinking somewhere. No, I don't have a specific location, but there would be room for it underneath Capitol Hill, which is a little bit to the east and south of the Space Needle.
Oh, all right then.
Yeah.
Nifty. Okay. Wow. That's like right there in the thick of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's consider. Since Mike is not known as Power Star, how are you going to be dealing with Vince, who is very much known as Advance, during this time in Seattle? I mean, how are you going to... Well, that's what I'm asking. I mean, he's shown up, he's got his overnight bag. What are you going to do with him?
Right. That's true.
Well, the first thing is the Power Star Cave, the PowerCave.
Ooh, that's right. We got to have a reaction there.
Yeah, the PowerCave is this vast underground structure built with mortar and wrought iron from the early 20th century, and has these big Tesla coils running up and down one portion of it, taking up a large part of it, and then there's all sorts of other gadgets and things. I
figure the 1954 era computer still has a canvas tarp over it.
I'm suddenly getting a view of, you remember the time tunnel?
Oh yeah, the big old wall. Oh,
yeah. Yeah. So anyway, there would be like a receiving disc in one corner. We'd arrive there. There would be because Power Star's predecessor had a secret identity. There would be an elevator that would have basically a secret exit. Maybe alternate. One is that immediately above the cave is one of my properties, like a living space or.
Well, you would have inherited. I suspect that would have been part of the inheritance.
Yeah. But there'd also be a secret way out, so I don't have to take Vince into an area that's identified with
Mike. Right.
With Mike, yeah.
Right.
And there's plenty of hotels, luxury hotels within walking distance. Yeah. So I'm just going to go and check him in. Break out the credit card.
Excellent. Okay. Now, one thing, Vince, that you will note, and you have a professional eye for this, is that this, apparatus and stuff that is in this cave is not self-cleaning, self-automated, self-running. It takes expense. It takes a fair amount of expense. One thing it doesn't take is energy from the power grid, because it's Tesla. And so, therefore, there's no need for that. But it is, on the other hand, something that does take funds to keep running. There's a lot of cool shit here that does cool stuff, and a lot of it needs maintenance or needs, and a lot of it has been tended to by Mike working alone, but he's not an expert. But even so, you can tell somebody.
Lots of paper manuals lying out.
Yeah, really. Places. Yeah, totally. But you definitely have. You're definitely looking at something that takes considerable financial upkeep. That's as an important aspect of this. And so whether you have a thought balloon about that, wonder how he pays for all this, who is this guy? He seems like, maybe he's just a kid from your perspective, at your age, and stuff like that. Okay.
Can I do the thought balloon?
I live for the thought balloon.
What's the corrosion on? This,
oh no, not again.
Transmatter coupling.
Right.
Boy, this stuff is old.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I did a little timeline that I'm not sharing with you yet because there's things on it that are not yet for your eyes, but it includes. I was kind of thrown for a bit of a loop when you said Charles Edison as the as one of the intermediary individuals in the line of Thomas Edison. I thought it was a fictional character, but I completely on a whim went to go look up Thomas Edison's actual family history since he was alive, and sure enough, to my shock, I found that his son was Charles Edison. And that was a surprise to Alan as much as to me. Mm-hmm. But when I looked it up, I didn't know it was a surprise to Alan. I thought Alan had been scholarly and had actually looked him up and said, that's my Charles. And I was like, wow, Alan was really cool. He went and he looked up Thomas Edison to find all this stuff. I better, not let him down and actually go and incorporate the real Charles Edison into my thing. And then I went and congratulated Alan, and Alan said, Charles who? And, so, but we're stuck with the real one because I did all the work, and I'm not letting it go now. So it's just one of those odd little creative things that happens. But that pumps it back. It makes it, and that's why I kept talking about Power Star as being like a really older hero, 20s-ish. Mm-hmm. And so that meant that Dr. Darius Darkstar became himself villain-wise in the 30s. So Power Star for a while first, then eventually his arch nemesis comes to being, and Darkstar has been apprehended and in prison, life in prison, since the late 50s. Nobody expected him to live to 118. And then Power Star was only seen a few times in the 1960s. And now that you've gone back and looked at it, not since, the early 60s. The Dark Cohort, on the other hand, started to call themselves that right at that time. And they're widely thought to have been founded by Dr. Darkstar, but if you go and count on your fingers, you realize that there's actually a bit of a gap between him being put away and then when they really got going. And the Dark Cohort were sort of a very active supergroup starting as late as the 1970s. And they have been going on ever since. And they've had plenty of members cycling out and members cycling in. And so they are still existing today. And even more so, not one of them has ever been permanently apprehended and brought to justice. Not one. So the Dark Cohort is like the gold standard of supervillainy.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And so there we go. We have then go ahead.
Are any of the current members originals?
Good question. My thinking was maybe one or two, or maybe one, at most. So I kind of liked the idea of the institution continuing through a fair amount of turnover. So I decided to go with that, but just for purposes of Avengers-style continuity, the odd original member may crop up once in a while. But I also kind of like the idea that, to people in the Dark Cohort, it's kind of a given that, at least historically, you go in and you go out and you win.
Okay.
It's kind of like, no. The evil does not bear bitter fruit. I'm fine. So, the next deal is to think about Michelle, because that's the first thing. Oh, by the way, you don't have to. It's up to you to decide. Do you or don't you take off the goggles and introduce yourself to Vince as Mike?
At this point, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's after you part and you direct him out the exit with, sort of a,
Oh, wait a minute. What's my intent? Yeah, my intention is to take him to see Dark Star. I had kind of hoped to just include him in the scene with the restaurant just because that felt cool. But
I'm not saying you don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you don't have to. It's completely up to you. I'm letting you sort of run your character as you see fit. You might want to go with just... you might want to go with just what you think the character would do. You don't have to plan it or make it work or arrange anything.
Okay. What I think Mike would do is set Vince up in a nice hotel and say, I've got an appointment and I'll be back. I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Within tomorrow morning, hopefully, we'll make a trip out to the penitentiary in Walla Walla and meet with Dr. Darkstar.
Excellent.
What am I going to do in a hotel? I kind of looking around at all the equipment and stuff. Maybe I could, be of more of assistance here, taking a look at this equipment. If you're comfortable with that.
He may not know exactly how to use his new toothbrush fully yet. That doesn't mean he wants someone else using it.
Let's talk about that later. So for now, just I can arrange to put you up and.
Yeah. Note to self: the new Power Star is slightly possessive. Right. Understandably so.
Sure.
But good. Shall I carry on from here?
Yeah, I'm just going to see Vince off, and then I'll go to my apartment in this building and change into Mike and head off.
Okay.
I assume Vince has some, baseball caps or some, something to.
You're gonna try and
make it so it's not like I'm in. Right. He's not coming out in a lab coat and stuff,
Right. No, I get that. You dressed appropriately for this trip and everything. You had time to prepare. So I figured you look however you want to look for casual visit to Seattle. Furthermore, you've probably gotten the idea that, slightly it's you're a celeb at this point, but you're not known. You can walk down the street without being mobbed. The fact that you live in Humboldt and it's a small place is why Denise, had any issues at all. But in a major world city like this, you're probably not going to get hammered on a casual outing.
Okay,
so
cool.
Unless you get really unlucky.
Right.
The wrong hipster at the right moment that will do it. But so
I'm not cutting off the ponytail.
I get it. I got you. Yeah. Do that. You lose 10 points for your public ID.
Okay.
So we have you're gonna hit the hotel, and if you're nobody likes to hang around in hotels particularly unless they're weird and lonely and sit at the bar. So therefore, I imagine you can take your time and look around as you see fit. Beautiful city, no question. Well, when you get to your domicile and sort of mic yourself, which means that, okay, where's my phone? The modern superhero, I mean, back when I was reading comics, superheroes did not have to decide the difficult question about whether they packed their phone with them when they put on the duds and went out. Right? I mean, that's a bit of a difficult question in lots of ways. But for the moment, we're going to say that I'm going to say that you had it with you the whole time, and therefore it's not sitting back in Walla Walla. And so,
Okay.
Your character is 30, and they do not part with their phones easily.
Well,
so
Rod's drawing there had a lovely vest that could easily have a
pockets. Oh, totally. Yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
And so what you find yourself doing, therefore, is you might want to hit the shower. You might want to, breathe a few times, look at the clock, figure out, it's the time of the day is probably all kind of wacky for you after all this hopping around, and so you're getting oriented. It might take you a little bit finally to punch the button and realize that you have 3 messages from from Michelle in the last hour and a half. 3 texts.
Hour and a half.
Yeah.
That's text. Okay. Right. And I will read them.
Right. One of them just says, hey Mike, looking forward to seeing you tonight. Give a message, shout back if send me a message, send me a reply. And then the second one is a little bit more like need to talk. Get in touch. See you later. Still a little cordial, right? The third one is fuck man, call.
All in an hour and a half?
Yeah.
Somebody's having a bit of a crisis. Okay, well, I will immediately hit the callback button.
Okay. Denise answers and says, "Oh,
Michelle.
God, I'm doing it again. All right, we got to see. I need a visual for Michelle. That's going to do it. You're going to have to tell me when we see her what she looks like. At the moment, she is a slightly ominous presence on the other end of a phone. And so the answer is she knows it's you, of course, because of the caller ID. And she responds with, "Hey, Mike." Pause.
Yeah. What's up?
Oh, geez. Terrible timing. Really sorry. I know it's important. I'll call back.
Okay.
And then it's off.
Okay. She just, okay. The call ended. Can't ask anything more. Okay. But I'm meeting her husband in like an hour or two.
Right.
Right.
Right. And she had said in her first text that she was, looking forward to seeing you tonight, which implies all of a sudden to you that she was going to be there. So, anyway, it's just one of those emotional whiplash, kind of interactions.
Definitely.
To some extent, and lets us all know that your life is sometimes complicated.
So the thought bubble is, The thought bubble is something to the effect of, is there something wrong with the restaurant, or ...
Right. Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
So shrugging it off is fine. Well, the Space Needle is elegant as ever. In Seattle, much to everyone's shock, a light rain is falling.
Oh.
Yeah. And that's a joke for you, Frank. Seattle is notorious for being lightly,
right.
Lightly drizzling at any given place at any given moment. So therefore, we have a bigger table than you may have expected, although Aaron had alluded to others joining you. And in fact, there are 3 people in addition to the 3 of you. But he and Michelle will meet you there. And and he says that the other people are, that they are not. It's not really a social get together. It's businessy. So they'll be joining us in a little bit. I thought we could relax a little bit first. Well, this is your brother, and he's. I hadn't really given much thought to what he does for a living or anything like that, unless you want to tell me. Although one thing I had thought is that he is not associated with the restaurant in that sense. He may well now be a businessy, partnery, element of the restaurant as a concern, because he's married to Michelle, but he doesn't necessarily. But he isn't like a restaurateur. He isn't running it. He isn't managing it. He isn't doing anything there. It's not his job. That's her. Whereas, do you have thoughts on that, or should I come up with something?
I'd like you to come up with something. I'm just going to throw in that he is a younger brother, so he's like 2 years younger than me.
Got it. And also we know that he's quite idealistic, and so he's been writing. He really is a dedicated author, and so far his publications are with, if not alternative, at least smaller publishing companies that are relatively local. So he hasn't published through Harper and Row. He hasn't got his, he hasn't got his big chain publishing company situation or anything like that. He hasn't been on NPR. He hasn't been in the New York Review of Books. Maybe there's been like a small review of his in the New York Review of Books, but not like, he's not a headliner. It's not big news when he comes out with something or anything like that. But so he is a published author, but he is not making a living off it.
You're thinking nonfiction, some
absolutely, very much a the new labor, new labor ideals for the labor ideals for the new millennium,
breaking the chains of the microsurf.
Well, perhaps. I'm not. I don't know just how radical he is. I think it was, again, we're talking an idealist. I was thinking very much of the forward-thinking idealist rather than the bitter ranting one.
Okay.
The people about to change the microsurf are older, like me, because we've been in the chains of microsurfing. But the thing I'm thinking of is more of, well, we have all these new technologies, we have all these new ways of doing things, we have all these, nobody thought we would have all this population. Everyone thought that the world would starve before we had this many people, where we can mine the moons of Saturn. He's a little bit of an idealist about that stuff. On the other hand, the establishmentarian approach to how to do it, he's like, throw that shit out. So that's kind of, you can't really tell whether he wants the government to do everything better or whether he wants there to be no government. He's kind of fuzzy on that. So,
neo-anarchist.
Yeah, it's a strange breed. We should do it all differently. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, there is no we, and you're like, there is an answer in there somewhere. I'm not sure what it is, but anyway, that's where he's at. Perhaps all of us are there. Well, he is. But the trouble is, he's frustrated because he has been busted. You've never seen anyone work as hard, except yourself putting the restaurant together. You've never seen anyone work as hard as this guy does at his writing. So.
Yeah. So got some respect for him.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You have the money and he doesn't. You have the inheritance. He doesn't. I'm going to say that the money was in your grandfather died in the 60s, and the money was actually held for 20 years, and then at that point it was could no longer be kept in kind of like this space that he had for it, and had to get renegotiated, and the wording was archaic and stuff, and so it just had to go to one offspring. And you were the closest, and you were the oldest, and so on. But it was very carefully designated for one person. And you, looking at it now, kind of get the idea that he may have had a person in mind. But all of that has been, rendered moot or weird or redefined legally or something, and it kind of landed in your lap. But the important point is that maybe you even had to bring like a third-party expert in to like make sense of the whole damn thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm starting to think that there might be some difficulty in just dispersing the money however I want. So there might still be strings attached.
It's a little bit complicated, but the most important part of it is that it wasn't an ordinary inheritance, and so therefore is at this point anyway. The frustrating thing, and there's your hands are tied, even if you advocated otherwise back when you were, back when this was under negotiation, legal clarification, I should say. Even if you had advocated otherwise, they could not split it between you and Aaron. It was just not possible.
Okay.
And now that you're Power Star, you realize why. This is Power Star funding. Mm-hmm. So no one else knows why it has all these weird codicils and stuff like that, but you do. Mm-hmm. But as far as Aaron's concerned, as you know, you just got filthy rich.
Yes.
And as far as he can tell, you're not doing anything, which is weird.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, he and Michelle greets you very calmly. No crisis, no hair sticking up, no rushing to you, no mention of the exchange of messages, and simply greets you, relatively, politely, little kiss perhaps, and and going to the table.
Okay.
And it all begins to rotate.
I'm circumspect about that.
Right.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of internal turmoil, but not exposing anything.
All right. Well,
so we sit down.
Mm-hmm. Aaron, explains that these other people are going to show up, but he wanted a little time to relax together first, and if you don't mind, maybe clearing the air a little bit. And this is where he kind of explains that he's really been thinking about this. It's been he would try to put it behind him. He can't. He can't. Says, look, I know that the lawyers and the experts and the financiers and everybody has been through this backwards and forwards. But so I'm not talking about my rights. I'm not talking about what's morally right. Even I'm just asking you. Would you talk to us as family? I mean, about your plans or your thoughts. I mean, this is a huge change. It's significant. I feel like I can't really just let it go by. I mean, I thought I could, but I can't. It's changed our relationship, Mike. I'm sorry, but it just has. So,
you're asking. Go on.
Oh, I was going to say make a 3d6 roll for perception.
A 10, which makes it.
You will note that ever so subtly, Michelle has been sort of levelly staring at Aaron throughout this whole speech, and you get the idea that you know who authored this.
Who what?
Who authored this.
Oh.
I mean, okay. in the sense that perhaps she's getting sick of hearing this from him.
Oh, okay.
Right.
It's not like it's her agenda. She's sick of his agenda.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Or at least hearing about it without, why don't you just tell him, kind of thing. Now it's like, you're telling him. So there's that kind of dynamic going on. Perhaps, if nothing else, well, I'm not sure if that's not the right way I wanted to put it. At least there's that going on.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, yeah, and it's he's being friendly. He's connecting with you. He's speaking earnestly. He's not, looking weaselly or shifty or anything like that.
Okay, so my response is, you're asking about the money, the inheritance, and what I plan to do with it, and why I haven't taken other actions that would be something I normally do. When I ran the restaurant, I was generous when I could be, and I supported causes and that kind of thing. I'm just in a situation here where you know that the inheritance came with some strange requirements, and there's elements of it that actually make it difficult, I can't talk about.
Are you saying you're legally bound not to talk about this?
There's some requirements that put me in a situation where I have to manage the money in a specific way.
Now they both
I'm prevaricating.
Yes,
here.
they both give you the not quite sure what to do with you look, because and Michelle finally says, and she kind of takes a more active part. She kind of shifts her position and says, well, maybe we should get before dinner drinks after all, because I think I'm going to need a drink. I'm either going to have to deal with the facts that you're suddenly mobbed up.
Mobbed? Did you say mobbed?
Mm-hmm.
I've got nothing to do with the mob.
Or you're lying for some reason. And she says, those are the only two options I'm coming up with. And so then she casually and very nicely, gets the over-degreed waiter, the overqualified, underemployed. That's the word I want. The underemployed waiter.
Underemployed.
Right. Yeah. And she says, we do want the wine. Actually, before wine would be wonderful. And she points out the wine menu and wants a thing. And so. So she says, maybe we should, she says, I actually, she says to Aaron, I'm kind of sorry. I know I pushed you to this, but I'm really thinking I do think it's a really good thing to ask, and she's having a little trouble with like who is you in this conversation. She either talks to you and refers to Aaron, or she talks to Aaron and refers to you. You can kind of see her do a little kind of neck twist there, trying to figure out which way to go. And so she finally says, "But Aaron's right. I don't care what any kind of law or other entity says you can or can't say or can't this. Even just because we care about you, we should know. Especially now," she says, "now I'm starting to get, you just made me nervous. Now I'm want to know because I'm worried." So there you are on the emotional hot seat.
I get that it's important. It's important for us to share information that it feels like I'm excluding you, and I don't want to do that right now, but I'm not ready to say anything more about this. What I would ask is that you know me from the past, so if you would just trust me, and for the time being, and I will see how this develops, and bring you in when I can. The other question I have, though, is I may be able to manage, for example, some kind of donation or endowment. It requires some organization of things. So if there's a specific purpose that, Aaron, you're thinking of putting the money to, I might be able to come up with something.
Aaron starts to look a little bit uncomfortable and offended. Number one, you don't need a perception roll for this. Number one, yes, he has a list in his head. Number two, he resents the implication that he would have a list in his head for such a thing. So he starts.
I want to make him uncomfortable.
Right, he starts to have that look of, I think we're going to have to start drawing on some family emotional baggage here to cope with this situation. So that gets going. And just about then is Michelle, noticing the tension rise, starts to talk a little bit about the people who are going to arrive. And she says, "I hope you can be a little bit more specific, when these potential managers, investors, and people, who've traveled to come meet you, when they sit down with us, they have some differing suggestions, and you're going to have to, make some decisions. You can tell them all to go home because you have your secret plans and obligations. You can pick which one you want to follow up with or anything like that. But there's some serious people.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You guys sprung this on me, and I don't think it's something I want to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe the better part of valor is just to contact your investors and say we have to delay.
Michelle is starting to say, "Yeah, I'm kind of getting." She's looking back and forth between you, both of you, trying to be super polite, and she's saying, "Yeah, I think that might be." She's starting to agree with you, and at that point, a bunch of people in the restaurant start scrambling, gasping, exclaiming, shrieking a little in some cases. And just as the disc of the restaurant rotates, it's moving away from the bay and back toward the mainland, and you guys can see a shocking and frightening glow erupt from a nearby area of the city.
Okay.
So, shall I tell you what the word is that's going out over the news scattered through every cell phone in the city through whatever medium people use.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And Vince, you would be aware of this as well, from in whatever way. Well, there's an orange alert, and the orange alert is, which, the Homeland Security, threat levels. And this one specifically has to do with observed members of the Dark Cohort here in Seattle.
Dun dun.
And that they're well known. There are protocols. This is the West Coast, which is where most of the superheroic activity in the United States has been historically. New York City is very disappointed, not like the comics. Sorry. And why would they all be in New York anyway? Who the fuck cares? Sorry, prejudice, bias. So we have that going on, and so not to be too cynical, I don't know if school kids routinely practice a protocol for when the Dark Cohort comes to town, but it's not unknown. The police, the security services, whatever, are reasonably, the certain roads are closed, certain roads are open, certain, protocols come into place, things like that. City officials are put on the channels, are suddenly open to communicate with them. What do you want? We're listening. The fucking rules. Don't blow up anything. That kind of stuff. All that's kind of going on.
If this happens in downtown Seattle, it also is a major traffic issue.
Oh yeah,
because downtown Seattle is the nexus for passing from the south side to the north side.
Right. Well, that stuff gets shut down. I mean, roads close. It's like, sorry, the rules. And so all that gets going, but it's not quite going yet. We're going into that mode of management. And so, yes, there is reports of eye fire. You may notice a certain trend in supervillain naming. It's not the most common thing, but more than a few supervillains have been something fire. And this one has no relation to Gemfire, but just happens to use the same naming convention. And so eye fire meaning like eyeball, EYE. And eye fire is doing what he does, which striding through an area, and his eye is like a spotlight. I mean, and it literally shines on things, and you can see their insides when he does it. And if it passes over a person, the person clutches their head and screams, and he is scanning all around. And so it's known that eye fire is looking. He's looking at a particular area, and he's been observed to step through one of Circle's circles, and then appears in a different part of the city and starts scanning there in particular places. He's clearly looking at or for something.
You said something about Circle. Is that a different character?
Yes, Circle is another character of the Dark Cohort, who, as you might imagine, is known to be a portalist, makes portals, and so among other things, and so that are circles, and so and so anyway, yeah, he uses one of those. So we all know Circle's around here somewhere, and then of course the one everybody's worried about is Obsidian. Obsidian's location. It's not like is Obsidian here. It's Obsidian's location is not yet known. And so it's just given, that Obsidian's got to be involved. And so that's the word at the moment. Now the news keeps up. I mean, first of all, there's a big worry about whether to evacuate the Needle. It's not made for easy evacuation. There's an elevator. And so do we have a riot of people killing each other with salad forks in order to get into the elevator? Or do we lock it down and say, okay, we're staying up here, we're safe, kind of. And, so the protocol is actually not to let people down the elevator. And this has to be carefully explained sir, you know that the protocol in a condition of emergency is not to choke the elevators. That you have to wait here. And so that dialogue is occurring with people who do not feel that they personally should be subject to rules. And so therefore that's happening at the elevators. And then you have so you have a little time up there. Here's what you can quickly realize, and you don't need an intelligence roll for it. Everywhere that iFire has checked, it includes the Ballard neighborhood where the restaurant is. It includes where you and Denise used to live. It includes the area. Let's see. Oh yeah, the house where you grew up, which is probably off, in another part, of the not the city proper. So people are like, what the hell is he doing out there? In some burb or some secondary city way out there. And so you realize to your alarm that
he's tracking me.
Yes.
Great fun. Oh, so, and he's like, if he's tracking, whether he'll arrive here or not is another question. Now, my problem is, my superpowers depend on a power suit that I did not imagine that I brought up the elevator in a suitcase.
Well, there are a couple of possibilities. You're not that far away. You would have to hike it down through the different blocks to get to where, but it's not like you're a state away. It's not like it's in Walla Walla or Portland or Humboldt, for that matter. But on the other hand, we can remember that in a comic, the hero frequently is not without his suit. And that they are strikingly transportable relative to their actual fictional bulk.
I might have actually have it in an attaché beside my chair.
Right.
Okay. Right. I think at this point I will excuse myself to the washroom.
That might be slightly difficult in that the washrooms are places. I'm not sure just what would be happening in an emergency situation. Would they just? I think they've got a restaurant person there who has been commandeered to actually manage the bathroom relative to people going in and out.
I wouldn't be surprised. And I do not remember. I've been in this restaurant, but I don't remember what the exact setup is. But they must have, of course, a back space where they actually have the restaurant cooking facilities and that kind of thing.
There's actually two. There's actually two levels.
Right. So it's probably the lower level. Or something.
Well, let's take a look.
So all the tables are in a ring around the windows, of course, and then the central area is looks like coat check and the access downstairs to where the restaurant is. I mean, where the kitchen is. Okay. Mike is a experienced restaurant manager.
True.
I think he's just going to.
God, that is the most. That is. Why is that not like a prominent skill in all role-playing games? It is so applicable everywhere. When are we going to find a situation? We're going to be in the jungle. Like he's going to be like bitten by one of those by a botfly, and he'll have like a swelling botfly larva in his leg, and he'll use his restaurant skills to get out of this somehow.
Are you mocking me?
I'm impressed. Actually, I'm merely impressed that the restaurateur is unexpectedly incredibly useful. Do go on.
Okay. Well. My thought is to attempt to act as if I belong in the restaurant, and just to head downstairs into the kitchen.
That's kind of interesting. it's technically, I guess, you know what? Technically, it's disguise.
Which I don't have.
Yeah.
So it'll be 9 or less, or 8 or less?
Well, it's we don't really have rules for the default, but I think since what the skill does is allow you to add your intelligence to a 9, then 9 or less is probably... and if it didn't apply at all, then I wouldn't even let you do it. Right? But it does apply. So we're going to call that a 9 or less.
Okay. Let's go. I got a 5.
Can't argue with it. There's a fair ruling, in my opinion, and a fair roll. I believe you. I believe you. And so, fantastic. You totally... I'm going to... Can I describe it? This is great. You actually,
sure.
like, take your suit jacket and, like, strip it off and, like, stuff it somewhere. And give yourself the quick open collar, maybe look around, okay, the waiter's stationed there, nip one of the little, vests or whatever, or, whatever it takes. I don't know if you go that far, but the point is that you quickly suss out what the staff look like and just adopt their way of speaking and the rest of it, and focus on people who aren't staff to interact with. Oh, excuse me, sir, just let me do this, that kind of thing. So that way they're not going to say, who are you? And, so you got it. You suddenly find yourself very much where staff ought to be. You know that on the service cart, they're going to slide the key that should be in the lockbox, but they need it, right? They need it during service times, and so they're going to just slide it under the towel, on that shelf. You're like, where would I put... it would be under... Right, okay, this little key, no problem. It belongs over in the manager's, desk, and that they're only supposed to go ask for it. But after 30 years of restaurant work here, nobody's messing with that anymore. So, all that stuff. And so, yeah, you're good.
Okay, I'm going to go to... there's probably changing room for staff, so... Just go to the locker room and try and find a closed corner or a shower stall or something.
Pretty easy. Yeah, you're going to suit up.
Change clothes.
Fantastic. Yeah. So, I'm kind of impressed. Vince, you've had you probably were just like sending a picture of the Space Needle, not as though not as though Denise can't look it up online anytime she wants to, but hey, you're there. It's like, what is Vince's activity and concern, as I imagine you're caught perhaps on the streets?
Yeah, so he probably would have been walking around, catching the sights, keeping a low profile. The hotels and stuff aren't very far away from the Space Needle.
Not at all.
No way. No, you are quite... you're in the vicinity for sure. Yeah.
Would I know that that's where he was going to his meeting?
Well, that was one of the reasons why I was asking about how much confidence you guys shared with each other, and the fact that he didn't want to means no.
Right. Okay. So, I suppose,
On the other hand, it does seem reasonable that you guys would have set up some mode of contact besides just calling you at the hotel.
Well, okay, I have a cell phone. If we should exchange numbers.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, although the whole secret ID at that point goes right out the window. But
Right.
That's a good point.
On the other hand, you're both like whack. I mean, he's a wacky tech dude, so...
I'm sure I would have offered my number.
Right, so you definitely have his. That's not a question. Yeah. Maybe that's the way to go. Just sort of leaving it in his lap, whether, he can call encrypted if he wants to, reasonably. That seems reasonable. Okay, so there you go. You're downtown, and you haven't seen anything like a person, like a supervillain or anything, but...
Gotcha.
But you have, but this is, traffic is completely curtailed. There's, people are running. or at least walking very hurriedly. People are suddenly on cell phones all over the place, telling everybody where they are. There's any number of distressed moments around you, but it looks as though for the moment the populace is keeping fairly cool and trying to cope.
So I could kind of check some of the news feeds.
All the things I said, yeah.
Okay.
The personal quality of where iFire is going is obviously not accessible to anybody. To anybody else, he's doing something purposeful, but there's no reason for why he's in this place, and this place.
Okay. Let me see here on the map. Besides the obvious Space Needle, which I would assume would know that that's going to be a no-go because people would be rushing up there to kind of get a glimpse of anything. Is there any easily accessible buildings that I might be able to get on top of? There's that parking garage up there.
Oh, you mean right there in the Space Needle Park area, which is a perfectly reasonable place for your character to go and like peruse the sites. So yeah, that parking garage, which is over there, like on the other end. There's like the pretty end with a fountain and everything, and then there's the Space Needle, and then after behind that's the big parking garage. That's the one I'm thinking about. So cool. Let's do that.
Okay. So I'll head to the top floor of that.
Nobody is allowed to go and start their car in the parking garage. The car's there. It's like lockdown on the street. So therefore, and people who have an emergency or something, or there's police are saying, they're setting up like a hurried, emergency nexus point that, like if your husband has a heart attack, or if you broke your ankle, or if you've lost your kid or anything like that, there are places that are being organized. It doesn't happen in a heartbeat, but that kind of thing is being organized around.
But it would make sense that one of the plazas in Seattle Center is pretty pre-prepared to have that kind of activity.
That's what I'm thinking too. Yes.
Yeah.
And so therefore, yeah, I mean, the place is nervous, upset, a little bit chaotic, but not a complete mess. You're seeing perhaps not the most. Some of it may be like feel-good policy. Like putting safety handrails on the gondola that goes up on the wire up the side of the mountain. Okay, look, here's a handrail. You can hold it. Makes you feel better to have a handrail, but if the wire snaps, you just hang on to it tighter. Good luck for you. So there's some of the policies are in that category, but others are not. Nobody is paying any attention to like the little lights, the emergency lights that light up so that for any reason, if people need to evacuate the Seattle Center, the little emergency lights or something light up so people know. Nobody's paying any fucking attention to those, for example. You go up there, and are you taking a look around?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying to think about this. Well, definitely you're going to have to make a perception roll for what I have in mind. And also, you don't have any senses concerning like energy signatures or anything like that, right?
No. I probably missed there.
For the future.
14.
Right. Right. Well, wait, you have a high intelligence. What is it?
Oh, that's 27.
You make it?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a 14 or less. So therefore, you definitely see, the I'm going to say too that since you know what the general problem is, therefore you have specific things that you're looking for. And so it's not just what do I see out there?
Okay.
Scan the planet. Why, Captain? Little Timmy has fallen down the well and broken his leg. That's not what we're talking about. You actually are using an experienced eye and a technical eye of, okay, well, Dark Cohort, what am I looking for here? So several things are apparent to you. One is that there is a streak across the sky of a flying person, very fast, like bomber fast. And so you realize that Raptor is on the scene. Where Raptor is going, what for, you don't know. Yeah. That the glowing flash that's real evident from the use of iFire scanning around is right here. That he's, you know, you can, oh my god, iFire is like right there. You know, because it's only the light that you see glowing up and like beaming around, so you don't actually see the person, but you know what little group of or area that he's in. And it is right by that fountain, and the glow itself illuminated the base of the Space Needle. And I just want to point out something. Should, in the fullness of time, one of you get the leisure time to look up who helped with the construction of the Space Needle for the Seattle Fair in 1962, and although this is not historical, for us it is, that a certain Charles Edison, one of his last projects was to consult in the Space Needle. Well, and also, I mean, it's not just called the time continuum, it's the space-time continuum. And this is, after all, not the dog needle or the purple needle or the anything needle, except the space needle. So, is it stereotypical to use the Space Needle in a Seattle story? Yes. But, on the other hand, it's begging for it. So, what can you do?